Guys, so this is a quick intro to making things in Decker. And in particular, we're going to make this game right here. If you want to follow along, you can go to this URL, tangentstorm.github.io dex Hilo tutor, and there'll be a link to that in the description. And if you don't know what Decker is, once you go there, you can go to the website, the Decker website, and learn all about it and try it out in your browser here. But every application that you make with Decker includes Decker itself. So everything that you would find in the official tour here, all of those abilities are right here in this deck as well. And so this is more about how to use it once you've got it installed, or just have it running in front of you in a web page. Okay, so the game is just a high-low game guessing the number. So you have 7 guesses, and you're going to try and guess a number between 1 and 100. So you've got a slider here that goes between 0 and 100, and then you can make a guess. So of course, I'm going to guess somewhere around 50. It's too high. So I'll guess somewhere around 75 and just do a little, still too high. I guess if it's too high, you should count to 25, right? So too high. 9 is too high. Wow, okay, 1 is too high. 0 is too high. All right, so try again, and hopefully this will not be 0 as well, because that would be silly. All right, so anyway, that's the thing. If you run out of guesses, it's going to tell you game over and ask you to try again. I'm not going to build all of this in the tutorial. Rather, I'm going to give you enough knowledge to put the pieces together, and then I'm going to show you how to view the source of this so that you can inspect it and add to it yourself. But we'll get pretty far. We'll get pretty close to making most of this game here, or at least a simplified version of it. And again, if you want to follow along, you go to this website and you'll be able to do all of this interactively. So you can do this at your own pace, and you can read all of the text on the screen. I'm not going to read every little word. Okay. So running code, the way this is set up, I have this little tutorial thing down here. So everything above this line is Decker proper, and then this is a thing that I've made running inside of Decker. So this little widget here, this blue thing, is my tutorial widget or contraption, and it can be configured on each page to do different things. So it has text on the left-hand side that describes the text of this particular part of the lesson, and then over here you have some code that you can run. So if we click on the run button, it says hello world, because the code says alert hello world. And then if it's white, that's indicating that you're able to click in there and change it. So of course, if we run it by itself, it just says change me. And if we want to change it to something else, we can say bananas. And then we can also hit shift enter to run it. So that's a little useful thing that you can do. So you don't have to keep reaching for your mouse every time. Okay, so back to the game. First thing we want to do is pick a number, and every piece of data, at least when you start out, that you use in Decker has to be stored inside of a widget. And basically on every frame, the system reads all the widgets on the screen, figures out what their data are, and then those are the variables you have to work with. We're going to follow this thing and say tools widget, or we're going to switch to the tool widget. And I also sometimes, if you want, you can go to Decker toolbars, and that puts these little toolbars on the side, and you can do lots of things in Decker. You can draw on the back of the card and do things like that. I'm going to undo that. But the primary tools that we'll be working with here are the interact and the widget tool. So this is interact and this is widget, and you can do it from the menu here or using here. I tend to prefer this one, and in fact, if you download the standalone version of Decker, you can press F1 and F2 to switch between these, and that's what I tend to do. But this is the official way that works everywhere. So we're going to go to widget mode, click widgets, new slider, and we have a slider. You can pick this up and move it around. You don't have to. And then if you want, I also tend to like to say show widget names under view, show widget names, completely optional. And then click tool interact. And the reason for that is to go back to interact mode. And now we can click this run button, and it's going to, if you saw that when we were here, the name was slider 1. And so by running this, we can set the value to a random number between 0 and 100. And if you just keep clicking it, it'll jump around like that. You click next. So anything that you put on the screen, this little tool copies it to the next card, so that you'll be able to build up like a versioned history of your game as you go along. As you go through each step, you can undo, and it'll copy both the script and the widgets that you create. Okay. So that's what the screen part is saying. And then this says that basically that slider 1 is not a very good name because this is acting as a variable. That's what we want to call it secret instead. So we're going to click here, double click on this or tool widgets, and then double click, and then we're going to just change the name to secret. And we'll get to the rest of the stuff in a little while. So back to interact. And now we click it again. And so now it's running. Had I not changed the name, this obviously wouldn't work because it's not called secret. Next. Okay, if statement. So now this is introducing the if statement, is if, else, end. So that's the structure for doing conditionals in Lil, the programming language here. And so we need to compare the secret value to a guess, the user's input. So widget, new slider. And you can put it anywhere for now. We'll just call it guess. We can change the looks again, but it doesn't matter. We'll get to that. Make it a bar so we can actually see what we're doing. So that's our guess. This is still a secret. We can see it's kind of a low number. So maybe we'll guess that's about 21. And if I run it, it's going to compare these two and see what we got. So it's too high. Maybe make it a little lower, 14 or so. Too low, so it's somewhere in between there. 17, too high. Okay. You see, we don't have the little clicker here to do this. So it's hard to get it exactly, but for a bar, you just slide back and forth. Okay, so click events, okay? All right, so on that screen, we were just running the code directly from this widget. But of course, this is not part of the main development environment. This is just part of the tutorial. And so what we want to do is we want to move this into the script of the widget itself. Since it's editable, we can copy it. We can select it and copy it. I'm going to just do that again. I'm going to hit Control-C to copy it. And then in here, we're going to click on the script button. And you can see it already has it populates. You see it down at the bottom, says no existing script populated the template. It gives you a little hint about what that is. We're just going to wipe that out and press Control-V. Oh, sorry. Yeah, this is supposed to be make a button. Right? It says make a button. Didn't read what it said. So widgets, so the event on sliders change, and of course it says click. Widgets new button is what I wanted to do. And you can put whatever you want on here. I'm going to say guess or something. Maybe submit your answer, whatever you want. And then script. And there we go. Okay. So now, back in this mode, we click guess, and it says too high. That's too low, and so on. All right, so that's the screen. Next. Resetting the secret. Okay, so add this code to the card to reset the secret. Okay, this is a handler for the loop event. Normally, I would normally put this in an event called view, but basically view runs every time on every frame where anything needs to be redrawn, basically. If you have something animated, that could be several, I think it's 60 times a second. And if you don't have anything animated, then it's just whenever the things change. But loop is a little bit of a hack here, and I'll show you why in a minute. But it happens whenever you land on a card. It's really meant for the sound device, so you can play a background loop, like a looping audio. But it's a hack in this particular case because switching to the listener, which we'll see in a second, triggers the view event, and I want the secret value to not change every time I go to the listener. Okay, anyway. You can just copy and paste it. You don't have to know all that. We can just go to script and card. So card and script, card, script. And if you're a native Decker, it's Control-E. So that's what my hands want to do right now. Again, you can just hit paste. See, you can see it said view there, right? On view. So that's kind of the default thing you would normally do. Just in this particular case, I wanted to not invoke the view thing. So on loop, do secret value equals random 100. So now when we go back to the page, it says 18. And if I click here and then come back here, oh, wait a minute. Sorry. It's this thing, right? This is the one that's changing. So let's make that a bar so we can see it. 87, and then click on here and go back. Yeah, so you can see that every time you switch back and forth, it changes the value. Confused myself there. I want to make these just different enough that I can see them. How about we make it transparent? Okay. So now when we run this, nothing happens because this is an event handler, but it does change a little bit every time we land on the page. Okay, and here's why. Oh, sorry. Actually, it's not I disabled the arrow keys, but yeah, the things only copy over when you click next. I press an arrow key and it changes the card without copying over. Okay, so the idea was just hide the secret. And maybe we could have saved all that trouble in the last screen by just setting this to show none, right? And so now we keep going back and forth and it's resetting every time, but we can't see it. And even if you double click on it, you can't see what the value is. And so if you press Control L, you get the listener, which is this thing that popped up at the bottom. And we can say secret.value, and it's 18. Of course, as soon as we exit and go back to interact mode, that's going to have changed. But when we load this up again, Control L and run secret value, and I'm just clicking on this to copy the text back into the prompt area. I press Shift Enter, and you can see that it's maintaining it. So the loop event does not trigger when you press Control L to toggle this on and off, whereas the view event does, and that's why I use the loop event as a bit of a hack here. Okay, so now we can inspect. So this is basically telling us this is the way that you can inspect through code what the value of that widget is. And so we said it was, what, 82? So if we set this to 82, it should 82, yes, you guessed it. Okay. All right, so slider styles. So this is just going to demo some of the slides that exist. So this is compact. You see we don't have the ability to slide back and forth, but we do have these nice little fine-grained tweaking abilities with compact. It's compact again, it's random, pick the same one. Horizontal looks like a horizontal scroll bar. Bar is what we've been playing with, where you can slide back and forth, but you lose the ability to get fine grain, and so it can actually be a little tricky sometimes if it's not big to get exactly the number you want, especially if your mouse is fast like mine is. And so I like to use a combination of these two, which we'll see in a second. And then here's vertical. And it looks kind of funny. It's a vertical scroll bar, and it would make a lot more sense if we resize this. But I'm going to undo that. Oh, we made this wrong. But we can just double click on this and set it to bar. Okay. All right, so a custom slider. And basically what I was saying is that it's a little annoying, I think, in Decker when you want fine grain control, but you also want to make big swooping changes. And so I like to use two different sliders together. So we're going to make a new one. Widget, new slider. And I'm going to call this guess_bar. And then we're going to make this one a compact one. No, actually, I'm going to make this one a bar and then make this one compact because it's just called guess. And then we're going to put this one right on top of the other one and line it up in exactly that little box. You can move it around with the arrow keys, and you can get really precise with this if you want. You can also, when I'm doing stuff like this, I tend to go in here and say like guess size, and then now you can set that to guess size equals 100, or I say 50, 25, and it'll be half as small or whatever. But let's put it back to where it was, 100. 25, and then we say guess bar, guess_bar dot size. We can see it's 7425. Okay, so maybe that should be 7525. Whatever. I'm not going to mess with this too much because this is just a temporary demo of how to do something. We'll move it over one tiny little bit. All right, so, okay, that's interesting. Has a little double look to it. But now we have both. Oh, no, we don't, because we have to use this script. So we have to, you can see that the arrow keys are not doing anything. So if we copy this and we go into each one, into here, and I'm used to keyboard shortcuts that don't exist in Web Decker. Guess, okay. Oh, sorry, I want to go on the script here. So for the guess script, I copied both of them. So here's a script for guess. And you can see it just says on change, set the bar value to whatever the value is. And then we're going to do the same thing for guess bar, and it's going to set the guess value to whatever the value is. So that'll keep them in sync. Changes, the event only triggers when you click on it with the mouse. It doesn't trigger when you just set it this way. So this will not cause any kind of infinite loop. So we'll go to script here and then paste. All right, so now with those two scripts in place, they should be in sync. So now we have 7, and we click these, it's copying the value back and forth. Okay. You can just trust that they're the same, or you can say guess.value, guess bar.none. Okay. That was not any kind of subtle message. That just was where it landed. Okay, next. All right, contraptions. Okay, so then just because I've done that so many times, I wanted to demonstrate that you can take something like that you've made. This is basically a new widget, and we can take that same idea and hard code it. And so this deck includes a contraption. A contraption is like it's a resource that can be imported and exported from a deck. And you can see under File, Prototypes, we have a contraption called Hybrid Slider. And it can have a description, and you can see it's just basically this thing. And if you go into edit mode, you can see I've done all those things. I've got one called a bar and another one called, looks like compact. And those same scripts are there. And I added this extra line that allows the contraption to propagate this change event to the card itself so that you can hook into this event, basically. But otherwise, that's the same basic change. You don't need to know this. This is more advanced stuff, and this tutorial is meant to be for beginners. So this is just something that you might want to know about, know that it exists. And as you get further along in Decker, you'll be able to use this to your advantage. It's not marked resizable. It should be. That's interesting. Yeah, it should be marked resizable. I guess I didn't do that when I saved it, so I'll hopefully fix that. But you can also see that there's like a grid here, and basically everything that's outside this box stays a fixed size, whereas the stuff in the middle resizes. And so you can resize this, and we'll resize both of these together because they both extend past this little box here. So anyway, this thing is something I added to the deck behind the scenes, and we can replace these two widgets with their own custom scripts with this new thing. So widgets, new contraption, a hybrid slider, create, and just to show you what it looks like, it's the only difference right now is that it's got these little dots on the end. But if you say show transparent, that'll go away. It's because the prototype has its own background and it's showing through. But these should look almost identical, except I actually got the spacing right on this one. Okay, so anyway, now we can just delete this, and we can call this one guess. And while the properties don't look exactly like slider properties, they have the same attributes. So we've got a min and max. This is actually called an interval in a slider, but they're broken out in separate pieces here. It's got a format, which is just basically how do you format that number? And then the value becomes an explicit piece on here, so you can actually see it when you open it. And then prototype takes you to that thing if you want to edit how the prototype works. And then script would be where you could write your own script to handle things on here. I'm going to delete this because we don't need it. Okay, yeah, so now if we run that again, guess value equals random, so you can see that it works just like a slider works. And the basic idea here is that you're able to extend Decker using these contraption things. In fact, this thing at the bottom is a contraption, and there's one copy of this on every page. And if we go into widget mode and double click on this, you can see here's the text over here on the left, and it's called rich text. You can go up to text here and change the font on that. You can make that bold or whatever. And you can change the pattern, make it red or whatever. And then here's the code. And these tell you what these buttons do. Okay, so there you go. When you save it changes that. Obviously, I don't necessarily want to do that, but see if undo. Okay, so undo doesn't quite handle that. Oh, it does. Did it? No, I'm not sure. No, I see. I'm undoing things that I didn't want to undo. Okay, I have to redo that. It doesn't, I guess my contraption doesn't have an undo. Okay, great. And that was supposed to be called guess, right? And we're back on track. Okay. Yeah, okay, so that's the end of the tutorial. So you've got the two values, you've got the guessing part, and then the challenge is for you to go in and create the other two main parts. One, we'll go back to the first card in a minute, but the first thing that's missing here is that we don't have the counter, right? Maybe when you start the screen, you want to set the counter value to 7, because if you know anything about a binary search, you ought to be able to do this in 7 guesses, right? Because if you take the number 128 and you divide it by 2 7 times, you get back down to 1. So 100 is smaller than that, and 2 to the 6 would be 64. In 7 guesses, you ought to be able to guess the number. And so that should be like the game over condition, right? And we'll look at how that works. But you already have now enough knowledge to do everything that you saw on the front screen, except maybe possibly the field widget, right? So the field widget uses .text, right? But since you don't know that, there are two things you can do. One is you can go to the Decker reference, and you just open that. It's right up here in the top help menu. And you can see all of these things. You can see, okay, I want to know about fields. So here's the fields interface. And these are all the things you can do with fields. So the text is going to be a string that has the text of the field. And there's also a value somewhere, I believe. Yeah, the value. And that's actually a table. And that is because, as you can see, there's colors. Here's a link, and here is colored text. And you saw we could change the font. So the value of a field is a table that describes every little chunk of text. Whereas if you just want the pure text, then it's .text. And you can set that just like you set the value, the .value for a counter. So yeah, so the challenge is to, once you get to this point, is to do that yourself and to extend it yourself. And so here's a little bit of helper code. This would be what you might do to start. And then on click, here's how you subtract the value. And now you can say if counter value. So basically this is if it's anything other than 0, then you do one thing. So if counter value, then do whatever was there before, else alert game over. So let's look at the code here. Okay, so I clicked the link to go back to the first card. And if we want to edit the script here, we can see some of the things that have changed. So first of all, I've extracted this thing called reset game. I've added some other widgets. In fact, if you go, while you're editing the script, if you click on File, X-Ray Specs, you'll be able to see all of the widgets on the page. And if you notice, some of them have a little icon next to them that says, that is the little icon for it. You can see it says LIL, and that indicates that there's a script attached to that widget. And so you can see there's the secret is up here. We've got a message. We've got a special that indicates that this card is not part of the tutorial and shouldn't be copied over from card to card. And the rest of it has to do with the game. You can see we've added a field called remaining, right? And if you make sure you have view show widget names, and you'll be able to see all this in the widgets thing. So under card script, I'm going to turn the X-ray off just so it's a little easier to read. It is very handy to use it, and you can get used to editing with it on, but I'm going to turn it off just so it's easier for you to see right now. But basically, by saying try again show is none, that's the same as clicking on the widget and saying widget show none, which makes it invisible. So widgets show solid is what I just is here. Show none makes it invisible. And card script. So when we reset that, we're going to hide the try again button. We're going to lock the guess button so you can't, or sorry, we're going to unlock the guess button because we lock it down here when it says game over. This is the same. This just sets the guess value to 0 by default. It says say guess a number. Say is a message handler. By default, we're passing in the color 0, so it doesn't actually pass in anything here. So when you call a function, if you didn't notice that, it always has these brackets on it. So in some languages, you use parentheses. In Lil, it's always brackets. Reset game here is calling this function. This is a function definition. It doesn't have to be built in. You can name it whatever you want. So here I just made up something I'll say, and that says message text equals text. And message is this big message bar across the top. It's just a field widget. Turn that off. Message pattern equals a color. I don't use that. So it's always sending it to the 0 color, which is white. But if we wanted to, we could say hello, and then color is red. Or the default palette, you can type colors and you can see all the names of the colors. And in fact, if you go to Decker toolbars, where are my toolbars one? There we go. And then if you click on one of the drawing tools and you click on style, then you'll see color. Here's the palette that you can choose from. This is the default palette. You can change this by plugging in the numbers for each of those, but you only have 16 colors plus those 6. I think there's 32 patterns, which we saw here. So 4 animated ones and 2 solid ones, and whatever's left is the 26. What do you call this thing? Dithering, like patterns, right? So yeah. So these are all numbered, and you can set the pattern to any of these things. So if we wanted to, we could say message pattern equals 15, and it's going to be one of those hard to read. You don't want to do this for text. But yeah, there you go. So colors orange or whatever. All right. So anyway, you could do that if you wanted to extend the game that way. And I think most of these things have colors, except apparently not the sliders for some reason. Okay, edit card script, or maybe not the slider when it's in bar mode. I'm not entirely sure. Okay. So what else did I add? I added this say thing. I said on game over, we're going to lock the guess button so you can't just keep clicking it. And then we're also going to show the try again thing. And then this was previously called, I think this was in the click handler. So now I've extracted the click handler. I just changed that to check. And the only thing I added to it was I added a call to game over right after if you guessed it. So that also ends the game. So if you guess the right number, it's still going to say try again. But at the top, it'll say you guessed it. So then the click handler handles the remaining value. So that's an extension of that little script that I put at the very end. So remaining value equals remaining value minus 1. And so if remaining value, that means if it's not 0 now, then we're going to check. But if it is 0, then that means you just used your last guess. So one of two things happens. So either you got the guess value equal to the secret value, in which case we say you guessed it, or we say else game over. And then, so you can see in Lil, the entire if-else expression returns a value, and that value is being passed to say. Anyway, either then, after that, we call game over, and that's it. And those are basically all the changes I made, but you can do all kinds of things with this. For example, you can play a sound, or you could put a smiley face up there. Lots of things you can do in Decker, and if there's anything you would like to know how to do, like a game you'd like to make, let me know in the comments, and maybe I will consider that for one of my next tutorials. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again in the next one.